I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and start by introducing our guests today. Judge Lina Hidalgo was first elected to county judge in 2018 and then reelected in 2022. She's the first woman and Latina to serve as a county's chief executive. Something more pertinent to why she's with us today, we all know this, in July 2023, she was diagnosed with clinical depression and took a temporary leave of absence, which is a move she openly shared with the public as a way to create open dialogue on mental health. So, as we all know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We're very excited to have Judge Hidalgo here with us today. And Jen Rice is our Harris County reporter. She reports on the county. She sits in on every commissioner's court meeting so that you don't have to. So without further ado, Jen, why don't you take it away?
Thanks so much. And thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with all of you. So we're just going to jump right in here. So Judge Hidalgo, you have a 24/7 job. It is 365 days a year. And my question is, to what extent do the public demands of being an elected official even allow someone to prioritize their mental health? And how does someone with a 24/7 job like you manage to deal with an illness under those circumstances?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you all. Thank you, Jennifer, and everybody who's joining. My favorite was joining from home. So that's great. And it's a great question. I actually am trying to do that right now. So I have a friend who's been sick for around a year at least, and she lives in Austin. So I've been trying to come visit her, but the weather made me push that back and back again. So I finally made it out here. So I'm in Austin, but working from here and hoping that I don't get called back for another thunderstorm. We're looking at the forecast maybe tomorrow morning, but we really won't know until tonight. So don't worry. It doesn't look that it's going to be very bad, but sounds like the visibility of the meteorologist have is like 12 hours. So as far as how to prioritize mental health when you have a job like this one, first I want to make clear that having a job like this one isn't the only time somebody would deserve mental health care or to make time for themselves. And I think I would have ended up in the same situation even if I hadn't had this job. In fact, I'm sure of that. As far as how to make the time, it is something I've been learning, right? I wasn't actually doing that before, and it's part of the reason that I got to a point where something had to change right now, right? That was about a year ago, and now what I'm trying to do is really learning there's an illusion, right, that I can really control everything, because I think there's a lot of people like me that whatever our job is, or if our responsibilities are at home, we just care so much, and we're like, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. But even if we do everything we can think of, that isn't all there is to do. It's impossible. And that sounds a little bit obvious to those that don't have that kind of a tendency, but for me it wasn't obvious. And so just being able to step back and relax and let go of that illusion of control, and making sure that I am making a conscious effort to see my friends, to have times where I'm not in charge. I'll go do things where somebody else is teaching me something, somebody else made the plans. And then even pulling back a little bit on my exercising, I do really like it. Right now, the past few weeks, I haven't had enough of it, which is a little annoying, but I was doing just too much because I don't know, it just kind of a not a healthy overachiever type situation.
Mm-hmm. And how has your experience with taking medical leave shaped what you think about Harris County's own employees and HR policies in terms of taking leave, and kind of the way you see, just generally speaking, the options that should be available to employees?
So Harris County has pretty generous paid leave policies, relatively speaking, with other public entities. But objectively, and certainly when you look at around the world, there's a ways to go. We do have an option whereby somebody needs to take even more leave. Other people can sort of transfer their leave to them. And so, there's that. The biggest problem though is on the insurance side. Well, obviously the stigma, right? The stigma is there, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But obviously, even after I was so public about it, even at the mental health treatment center at Lindner where I was the only one who's even beyond the super immediate family knew what was going on. The other folks in there, maybe they told their partner, but their kids didn't know, their friends didn't know, the mom, grandma, they didn't know. And then the health insurance piece. So we fought it. We fought the insurance a lot. Harris County just hired a different insurance provider. That actually happened while I was gone, that my colleagues made that decision. And I hope you guys don't hear this weird noise that's coming into this conference room, but
You sound good to me.
okay, good. So anyway, and so I said, well, we really need to improve the health insurance, the mental health coverage in our health insurance. And I was told, well, no, there's mental health parity, it's required. And so in fact, it is covered, but that's just not the case. What in policy and insurance speak is called parity between mental health and physical health is not what we would ordinarily see as parity. For example, for me, even though all the doctors agreed I needed to be there, all the insurance would cover is the fact that I had to go there and be there for the first 2 days until I wasn't imminently suicidal, and after that I didn't need to be there. And so it's basically just sort of like stabilizing care, and we have really good health insurance. So that's something that I've talked to certainly my contacts at the federal level about. Was chatting with Senator Fetterman about a few weeks ago, and in Harris County, we're just trying to do everything we can so that our Harris Center offers that kind of programming. But there are actually a lot of spots that people don't use because they're not willing to seek that kind of treatment.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the stigma. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to speak so publicly about what you've been going through?
I don't remember thinking about it intentionally. I remember my doctors, both my PCP and my psychiatrist, who said, you have to go there. They said, you don't have to tell people about this. You don't owe them anything. It's your health. Just say you had a health issue. And I remember when they said that, I felt a little bit repelled by that idea. And so I did say to my staff, I was like, I want to make clear where I am, and I want to make clear why I'm here, and I want to include resources for people. I think the reason I was so set on that is twofold. One, I have just discovered, ever since I was a candidate in 2017, 2018, all the way through to now, that it's better internally for me as an individual to just be really open about stuff, because, and I always am, like I'm the kind of person that's just like, maybe shares too much, right? But it just helps me not have to be like, oh, what did I say? What did I not say? And so there's that. But also, one of the reasons, probably the main reason why I was willing to go for inpatient treatment is because I'd read about Senator Fetterman's journey when he first checked himself into a mental health treatment facility. And then a few months later, once he was out, when Time Magazine wrote a profile on his experience. And so the second piece, the Time Magazine one, was right around the time that I was, being told I needed to go for inpatient treatment. And so I just felt, whether consciously or subconsciously, like I need to also be public because it might help other people.
Mm-hmm. I want to move on to talking about hurricane season, since that's another challenge that, a lot of people are dealing with here. So, you took office right after Harvey, when the area was recovering from that, and you've been right there at the table, with a seat at the table, watching this region as it, tries to come back from that. And my question is, what are some of the biggest challenges you think that stand in the way of Harris County's ability to recover?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a big question, but it's a question that we absolutely have to confront. Um, if if nothing else, because the part of the reason we're here now is because leaders from decades past did not confront this question head on. It's not a surprise that Harris County's built on a swamp, 50 feet above sea level. I mean, everybody knew that it floods. So I appreciate that conversation. It was had decades ago, but it wasn't really worked on enough. And I appreciate that after Harvey, there was at least the public pressure to say we have to do something. The problem is that the something, right, the flood bond was not enough by any means. Even back then, I remember chatting with Jim Blackburn, who you guys know is a preeminent academic in this area and advocate and in our community. And this was, I think it was even, yeah, it must have been even before folks voted on the bond, but when we knew what the size of it was going to be. And he explained to, really what we need is just a lot more. I don't know why the leaders then chose that number. But what it has caused is, a lot of disappointment in communities that say, I've sat in community meetings where they have beautifully presented, very thoughtful, very well-studied proposals that the community needs. And so they can't wrap their heads around, and I can't either. I understand, why we're all frustrated, why that project can't get done. And the answer is we just don't have the money for it. As an example, the Kingwood area, I think around $10 million were allocated in the flood bond for Kingwood. Well, that's the cost of just one of the projects, but really it needs like four projects, including one really major one that costs way beyond that. And so that continues to be very frustrating. It holds the community back in terms of leadership because my colleagues who have defined districts, they're spending a lot of time of our department heads trying to fight for those, what I call, we need to look forward, right? But everybody's trying to fight so that they can show their community, right, that they're trying to get whatever little bit they can. But the truth is, none of those projects on their own are transformational enough. Do they help? Yes, but they don't help enough. And a good example of one that does is the Braze Bayou project that actually had been stalled for decades, and we finally got it done. And it really, really does help that Meyerland area, and it's already shown to be helpful. Would it sustain another Harvey? Not sure, but it certainly would make things a lot better. And so we have made progress. We have new detention requirements. We've gotten other cities to adopt them, including the city of Houston. Continuing to advocate with the communities up north, that's another piece that we really need. And I think right now is a good time for the constituents up there to advocate. They were hit even harder than we were down in Harris County with the flooding about a month ago. And they're growing, so they actually can make the decision now that our predecessors didn't make in Harris County decades ago. And then we're working on having buyouts more easily accessible. Anyway, I won't bend your guys' ear, but the big thing is we need another flood bond that actually will fund transformational projects. And so that is what I'm trying to encourage.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think about this a lot in terms of the $2.5 billion bond. That sounds like so much money to people, but within the context of Harris County and the type of flood risk that we face here and how large this place is, I mean, how do you even evaluate the size of another flood bond? Is that like $100 billion bond? Like where do you even, figure out what the scale of it should be?
Yeah, it would be orders of magnitude larger. I can't say a number right now because that hasn't been fully evaluated, but at least in the tens of millions. And that kind of thing has been done in other jurisdictions when they need something transformational. The good thing is there is a way to define it. So during these past floods, I spent quite a bit of time with our flood control district director, Dr. Tina Peterson, and she's wonderful. I mean, we've had some great directors, but I think she's just absolutely qualified and knows not just the sort of engineering water speak, but also the way to communicate with the rest of us. And I said, I've been talking about this since 2019 that I took office, and I am sure if we hadn't had, the flood and the fires and the COVID and all of this, we would have had more time to work on it. But also I do feel like it's just a really tough mountain for me and my staff to climb, and like, why? What is it? And so and is it that hard to come up with it? And so what she explained is it's not that hard to come up with it. We can figure out what it is that we'll need and be really realistic about what the money is going to cover, unlike what happened obviously with the previous bond. I said, how can we totally leapfrog this? Because we all figure the problem's only going to get worse. So we do this bond and then, we're actually behind again. She said, well, the way to leapfrog it actually is a big idea like the tunnels. But that would take 25, 30 years with the Army Corps of Engineers, and just imagine how many floods we'll get from here to there. So that's something we can think about, right? And put it in plans, and maybe that's what the bond is for, or the bond helps us sustain us until then. We just have to. And I said, okay, well, why haven't you finished doing this? I've been talking about it over and over again at Commissioner's Court and private. And she said, well, we are just so consumed by our work on the previous bond. And in the work being, trying to negotiate between precincts with the little bit that is there and trying to stretch the money because projects were promised that there's just not enough money for, and there was never going to be. So, one of the things that I talked to her about and the county administrator is, couldn't we have like a separate division in her office that focuses on the future? Or we had actually created a board around this, the Community Flood Resilience Task Force, but they also kind of got sucked into the past. So that's something that I was just had a conversation with my staff yesterday in terms of like, okay, well, now that this is hopefully over, can we go back to the proactive flood control planning?
And you mentioned Project Braze, which is something I also think about a lot, where, it was a transformative project that, took a lot of structures out of the floodplain. But at the same time, like you said, if there's another Harvey, it's not clear, to what extent it would be able to protect people. And I think a lot of people want to hear, oh, this big project happened. It was a huge investment. It's done. It's complete. We're never going to flood again. And I'm just curious how you kind of balance that with public messaging, where you want to tell people this project is working, and you don't necessarily want people to have a false sense of security. So I'm wondering how you navigate that.
Yeah. So I saw a question here actually that just got my mind, and I'll answer yours in a second. But in terms of could the lack of money for the previous bond have been cost overruns, ineffective projects? So there was that in terms of inflation, and the cost of maintenance for the projects was actually not included in the bond. That wasn't thought about, but we've managed to, kind of get money from here and from there and restructure things to try to be able to afford that. And then we've even brought in people to try to evaluate whether that kind of thing is happening and try to make things more efficient. But fundamentally, there was never going to be enough money for the projects that were proposed. But anyway, to your point, I do like to say to people, you know, actually, when we cut the ribbon on Project Braze, my communications director was really frustrated because it was like a joyful day, and I was like, this is great, but you know everything I just told you guys, and he was like, you just, you know, like you're just like just putting a downer on the whole thing, and what, you know, you just need to be positive. So I guess I still struggle with that, but I just want to be realistic. I do think, you know, the way that Dr. Peterson thinks in terms of leapfrogging, you know, really getting us somewhere where, I mean, nobody can predict the future, but there's a way in which we can really turn the page on this as much as possible. The other way to do that, or, you know, in parallel, is the buyouts. So, you know, that's really tough for people to accept, especially neighborhoods that have been there for a while. But there are areas that are just always going to flood. And we know what those areas are, and it's a little bit of a fight, right? Like, I've been wanting to put out updated maps with that at a granular level, but then, you know, there's a lot of, I don't think there's enough support for that amongst my colleagues, and obviously it becomes an issue for flood insurance costs, which, you know, there are going to be some updated FEMA maps and whatnot. But what we're trying to do there is, and part of the advocacy I've done over the past month or so, both in DC and in Houston, is for us to have an evergreen fund in our county coffers that we can use to buy people out right after they flood. When I visited the communities on the East Fork of the San Jacinto River, on the east side of the East Fork, well, both sides, they flooded quite badly up there after the heavy rains a month ago, and people, you know, had heard about the buyouts, and they were like, can I please sell you my home? Like, this has just happened too many times, and I'm going to rebuild, and I know it's going to flood again. And the process takes like a year, 6 months if we're lucky, and by then people have already put down the floor, or, you know, they've had to start rebuilding, and it just doesn't make sense to sell at that point. So we have done one mandatory buyout project. It was quite fraught. Eventually it got better, but it was a lot of bumps. I'm not proud of it. I do think we learned a lot. That's not really what we're looking at right now, just because that was just really tough for everybody involved. But on the voluntary side, we at least want to make it easy for people. And we may need to start thinking again about mandatory. I don't know, and I don't know if there'd be support for that.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the idea of having sort of like an evergreen fund. Is that something are there a lot of barriers to setting that up, or kind of what's standing in the way of the county being able to do that?
Money. So in 2022, when I was up for re-election, this is something that happened that continues to affect us now. And every year we vote on the tax rate for the county. And so for as many years as we can remember, certainly with my predecessor, including the members of court that were there at the time, that had served before I took office, they would keep the tax rate the same, but the property values, as people well know, have gone up. And so that's how we could afford to cover the services for the population growth and the inflationary issues, et cetera, et cetera. And so that year, the story was Lina Hidalgo is defunding the police, and for that reason, we're not going to support the budget. And, you know, it was totally a political issue. We were actually going to add $1 billion to the police, to law enforcement budget, including a lot more police officers and assistant district attorneys and whatnot. And so, but you know, because of politics, ultimately it was my colleagues failed to show up to the meeting, and which meant we had to adopt a very, very, very low budget. We were actually going to cut the tax rate, not just keep it the same. We were going to cut it, but we had to adopt a very, 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 very low one, which meant not only did law enforcement not get the $1 billion, but Harris County simply did not have enough funds to cover all the services. And even worse, there's a state law that passed that says we can only increase our revenue by 3.5% from year to year. And so by cutting our revenue so much, we basically cut ourselves off at the knees for the years to come. You know, you can draw those projections and they're quite startling. So this year we're actually at a deficit, and we're still trying to figure out how we're going to address that. Thankfully, we do have a contingency fund for disasters, but you know, obviously that just got drawn down. So it's a money issue. And so what I've been advocating for is that the federal government, that FEMA, send us that money for us to just have. And you know, they haven't said no, so we're working with them. I've spoken with the administrator, I've spoken with the senior folks in the Biden administration, and then our county leadership is in touch with their top staff, and they apparently have something like a pilot program somewhere else in the country. So you know, fingers crossed that we can at least do a version of that.
And I'm going to switch gears again. I want to ask you about the guaranteed income program. And so, you know, basically Harris County has this new pilot program that they've been working on putting in place that would provide a guaranteed income for, I think, was it about 1,900 families? And but the state has been challenging the legality of that program. And I know that you have said that you're skeptical that the Texas Supreme Court is going to side with the county on this. And I'm just wondering what you think the next steps are.
Yeah, well, let me start with the last thing you said. You know, we just had runoff elections, and the Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives got reelected just by the skin of his teeth. And generally speaking, the folks that Attorney General Paxton and Governor Abbott supported won their primaries and defeated many incumbents. And so there's a lot of political fear in the party about, you know, can you cross the Attorney General? And that is why I believe these judges in the Supreme Court who ultimately are elected, who ultimately face primary challengers, don't have the incentive to really look at the law as opposed to just siding with the Attorney General. But we'll see. You know, the Court of Appeals actually found in favor of Harris County, and it was 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. And so, you know, that gave me some hope because the legal arguments are very clear. And I'm not a lawyer, I've 1 year of law school, but I have sat with the lawyers for a long time. And here's what they've explained to me is the arguments that the state is making, that the Attorney General is making, just don't hold any water at all. One argument is that the program is illegal because it's a randomized selection process. Well, it is a randomized selection process, but you only qualify for the randomization if you meet certain criteria in terms of income, in terms of where you live, and you're vetted to make sure it's not a fraudulent application. So that is not a real argument that holds water. The other argument is that the program only benefits certain people, and so it's not in the public interest. But you know, there are a lot of programs, government programs, state programs that only benefit certain people. Like, you know, you can't you just, not everyone qualifies for every program. And you know, the biggest point is the program has existed already in Austin, in El Paso County. If it's not there yet, it's about to be, San Antonio, you know, since 2020. So they never had a problem with it until it came to Harris County. Plus, you know, President Trump at the time, then President Trump sent, and you guys will remember, I certainly received one that I donated to charity, but checks, right, to pretty much everyone. I can't remember what the selection was. So anyway, that is the reason why it really looks like a frivolous. I'm quite convinced it's frivolous. And the sad part is the families, because you know, the state has known about the program for a long, you know, since last May last year. But they didn't step in against it until the families had already been notified. The families that were selected had already been notified that they were going to receive the funds. So they were already planning on it. And it was stopped like, you know, the day before they were going to receive the one payment, or the day of, I think. I mean, it was just a rush to the end. So we'll see. There hasn't really been any movement on the legal side. So, you know, it might take a while for this to go anywhere, but that is the limit of my legal knowledge. So I better not get myself in trouble here.
Got it. We're going to switch to reader questions in a minute. I'm going to do one more question. And that's, you know, I hear this question a lot from people. People want to know if you are considering running for another term in office.
Yeah, yes, I do plan on running again. And I'm really excited about that. And I think part of it was obviously the mental health treatment. It felt like a duty to complete the job and not a coward to all the different attacks. But with my mental health as it was like, you know, there's just no way. But now I'm like, you know, I feel like I can do anything, you know, it's just great. And I mean, I'm working at it. Like, I have group therapy today, and you know, it doesn't just come, but I'm working on it. And then the other piece is obviously just all of the turbulence, so to speak, that we faced with the various disasters. I think there's some big things I still really want to get done, particularly on the flooding piece. So yeah, so that's I'm excited about, and I'm glad that you asked that.
Great. And I think we can do some reader questions now.
Yes, that's right. So for those of you who are asking, yes, there will be a recording of this event posted tomorrow on YouTube. So keep an eye out for that on the Houston Chronicle YouTube channel. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. We got a lot of questions. We got this by email and then also in the chat function too, is people want to know, you've had a fairly untraditional career path for a county judge. What advice do you have for young people? Someone also in the chat asked, you know, can you give advice to people, young professionals that feel they can't break the barrier to grow and achieve because of ageism?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And it even after I won my election to county judge, I still was like in my head about my age. Like, literally everyone in my office was older than me. Now I'm older myself, you know, I mean, you know, compared to being 27. And so that was just like, it made me feel inadequate. So I would say just like, don't hold yourself back about it. It's been really like, if my example can help you, you know, not only am I younger and was even younger compared to everybody else, but I'm by no means tall. I, you know, don't really do anything to my hair, so it's like curly and crazy, and I don't try to make my voice deeper, and I actually enjoy, you know, bringing out my true self, which is like mostly like very like bubbly, and you know, some people say it's like childish, but to me it's just like joyous. So you know, I hope that can help. For me, some of what helped was seeing my my fellow candidates back in 2017 and 2018. So there was this one time that I was driving, we had a rental car, and so I was driving Gina Ortiz-Jones, who was running for Congress at the time in San Antonio, and Lauren Underwood, who is a congresswoman from Illinois. And we were, you know, we were supported by a group. There was 10 of us, the arena, and so, you know, we got close. So anyway, somehow the topic comes up of where we're living. And so Gina and I are just kind of quiet, and Lauren goes, well, I don't have any money, so I'm living with my parents. And then like Lauren and I confessed, we also didn't have any money and we're living with our parents. But we were just embarrassed to say it. And that's part of what I love about these younger folks in office or leadership in their fields, that it's like, you know, for like, I don't own a house. I don't have money to buy a house. I have student loans. And so it's like, I just say that, you know, when I'm in with the realtors or anyone, I'm like, even with my staff, I'm like, what's a weatherhead? I don't know what a weatherhead is. I don't have a house, you know, and that's okay. Just own it. And so, that would be one piece of advice. And then the other thing is, especially when you're young, like there's, it's hard to it's hard for something that you want to do, that you're curious about, that you're excited about, to end up being a problem. Like, I mean, and I honestly, like, I don't think this is just about young people. Like, I think anyone who wants to do something else, like, you know, like, it doesn't hurt to try it. You do have to take risks. I ran for office. I was in the middle of graduate school, like, you know, and they told me that if one, I could still finish my degree somehow. And I was like, sure. And then afterwards I was like, yeah, so where's that degree? And they were like, yeah, the lady that talked to you doesn't work here anymore. So, you know, it's just, and now I'm a dropout, but that's okay. I'm happy with where I am. So yeah, that would be what
Yeah, that's great. Um, a few questions here about burying power lines, and I think this is especially salient given the recent storms we've had. So, how realistic is it that power lines in the future could be underground to help prevent massive power outages? And is it feasible? Clearly, it's a massive project. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, I confess that I have not had a discussion about that recently, so I'm writing it down. It's a good question. The lack of power was a huge problem. We finally, working with FEMA, we got this, the official name of it is TSA. I can't remember what it stands for, so let's not call it that. It's the Hotel Assistance Program in our hearts. And so it's allowed people who are still lacking power, or were still until recently, were really struggling, to stay at hotels on FEMA's dime. And so we've already had several people that are using the program. FEMA, as of today, has served, I have the numbers here. Well, we're at over $21 million committed, but it's way more than that at this point. 7.5 thousand hotel folks using the hotel stay program. And we have, well, anyway, that we have 5,000 applications to SBA, several that have already been accepted. So we have had a lot of programs to support with that. But obviously, you know, we would want to prevent people's food going bad, and the heat and all the suffering. The other
Right.
thing I want to acknowledge is the work Centerpoint did on figuring out how to go around the down towers, because that was going to take weeks. I know it did take around a week for some folks, and that was horrendous. And we even had deaths related to that. But it would have been much worse had they not figured out how to do that, which, you know, they didn't know how to do, for example, when Ike happened. So I will definitely do my homework on this. And I suspect that, you know, there's a reason why they haven't done it, but I will ask.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. All right. And then reading, this is a question that came in from email. How do you feel about the state of the Democratic Party in Texas? It almost feels like we're completely ignored here when it comes to the statewide or national races. What kind of organization needs to happen?
So it feels like we're completely ignored when it comes to, can you repeat that last part again?
Statewide and national races.
Oh, I see. Yes. So, um, I mean, it's a fight, right? Like, we have more work to do in terms of just the party being more, I think it has become more well organized. I'm very proud of our local party leadership, but I do think there is more work to do from the party in terms of, you know, fundraising and really being able to operate in all the different parts of our state. But you have to remember, our state is enormous. And so, you know, when you talk about the amount of money that went into Georgia, for example, that is, we would need orders of magnitude more for Texas. I'm waiting. from my staff here to comment if I'm crossing any lines, but I don't think so, because I'm not advocating for anybody. And I will say, if you think about just how Harris County has changed, that is a reason for hope for sure. When
Mhm.
I ran in 2018, I did not have an opponent. I had an opponent there for a minute, but you know, I won the primary unopposed, and I was a 27-year-old, 26 at the time, from, you know, just nobody knew me. So I think, or I know the reason why nobody else ran is because they didn't think it could be won. And
Mm.
not only did I win, but a lot of Democrats up and down the ballot won. And we've sustained a lot of those wins and are slowly building on them. So things are changing, certainly not as fast as many of us would like who are on the Democratic side. But you know, and this is the part that the folks on here from the Republican side don't like to hear, and it's that you know, we are building that power, and I do think that's why folks have been just so relentless in attacking me. I don't think it's because it's me or because it's the county judge's seat. I think it's because that change starts in Harris County. That's what happened in decades ago when the state was Democratic and went for the Republicans. It started in Harris County. Obviously more work on voter mobilization, the fundraising again. And so, you know, just encouraging everyone to participate. But let me just close this with saying I am 100% committed to representing everybody. I remember one of the biggest disagreements I've had with my colleagues was a big buyout we did up in Kingwood. When folks will remember what they called the Perry Homes floods, and so that's now a detention basin. And I advocate constantly. Recently, I remember there were some issues with some softball courts in also a Republican precinct, and you know, I held fast on that, and obviously getting the aid to areas that, you know, probably will never vote for me, but we were fighting for them. So I, no matter, you know, who you vote for or even, you know, who you support, I am absolutely committed to that. And I'm excited that our county clerk and hopefully whoever ends up being our new tax assessor, voter registrar, will be committed to protecting voting and access to voting, and I'll certainly continue to do everything I can.
Yeah, fantastic. We did get a lot of questions, and I see one that just came in about you and Mayor Whitmire, and there was a video clip that sort of went viral on Twitter last week. How is your relationship working with the mayor?
Yeah, well, I'm proud of the video. I think that shows, you know, all of the work I've been doing. And it was yeah, I'm really happy that I have that sort of calm inside and outside now. And I'm grateful people recognize that. I think I'm still very, very hopeful that we'll be able to continue building the relationship. I continue to be thoughtful in my team as well about inviting him to anything that we think would be appropriate for us to do together, as well as to request a meeting. And I do think that would be good for our region, and I'd love for him to meet with Commissioner Ellis as well, just because his precinct basically overlaps with the city. But you know, we'll make it work. We're nothing if not resourceful, but I definitely want to build a stronger relationship. And you know, if there's something I've learned with all this treatment is certainly, you know, putting away the judging, letting bygones be bygones, the obvious stuff they tell you, but that so many of us just never internalized. So yeah, I'm excited to be.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. A lot of questions too, a lot of comments about the state takeover of HISD. Obviously, Harris County, not really, you know, and something that deals with education very often. However, you know, a lot of HISD public school parents are watching And just wondering what can we, what can we do? Like what are things we can do on the county level to help support our kids' education and futures? What kind of recourse do parents have?
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation, I know, for so many families, teachers, school staff. As far as the kind of work the county does on education is, obviously our early childhood programs are some of our most our proudest achievements. So we're hitting $80 million on high quality early childhood education for our county, and we're hoping to be able to make that permanent. But the kids are in the schools and there's thousands and thousands of them. And these early childhood education sites are more sustainable, and the teachers are able to get better training and better compensation. So very proud about that. And then as far as specifically HISD, we have sent some funds for mental health treatment in schools. Again, not enough by any means, but the folks that it does help, that's a big deal. Training more mental health professionals, that kind of thing. I have had conversations with the members of the board that I know, as well as obviously the superintendent. I have a very cordial relationship with him, and I think the key is in communication. And I think to the extent that families and stakeholders continue to push for that, because I I don't believe that they're acting in a way that intends to harm the community, but I do think that there's no such thing as like the benevolent dictator, right? Like that's why I'm so focused on at the county, making sure there are checks and balances on us, and that the rules that other departments follow, the members of court also follow. And so I think that whether the ideas are good or bad, it's just really important to bring the community along, and there needs to be a lot more effort there. There may need to be some better communications advice, community meeting advice. And I understand the community is frustrated, but I don't know that just the fighting is going to get us anywhere, as deserved as that might feel. So that's my focus. I did talk to Mike Morath when the takeover first happened, and I said, how can I be sure that you guys aren't going to start saying that we have to ban this book and that book, and that, kind of what they're doing at some of our school districts, which is just so obviously political and absolutely awful. And he assured me that that is not what they're there for, that, even if the state leaders were to ask for something like that, that's not what they would do. And so, I hope that is the case, but for sure, even where we are now, things need to change.
Yeah. This is, a little bit back to what we were talking about before. Who do you lean on for guidance or advice? Do you have any local elected officials that you feel you can bounce ideas off of, considering this is your first job in office?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the folks I talk to are from around the country. It's like, they always say there are no friends in politics, and I try to like not believe that, but the more time that goes by, the more I realize, like, unfortunately, especially like in your own community, because there's always the feeling that like one day we might be running against each other. So I'm trying to build some better relationships with some colleagues, but mostly folks from other parts of Texas or other parts of the country. I talk to most of my colleagues I talk to are way older than me, have way more experience, and it's been very helpful to hear from them. Even like, even though I've been here 30 years, like COVID is the hardest thing I ever had to do. I'm like, okay, it's not just me. I like to talk. I like for my staff to always find second, third, and fourth opinions. And so even though we have a county leadership that we've worked really hard to build and improve, I still want to know what people think on the opposing side, what people think in industry, what people think in the academic setting. So we have sort of a running list of folks that are willing to chat with us when something happens. For example, when the train materials were coming from Ohio, that was one where we just talked at, you know, every kind of stakeholder in order to determine what our position was going to be. And then I do have a couple of political advisors, but and they just support me as friends, and they're wonderful. And I'm not going to mention who they are because
Sure. Yeah.
they're well known. And then, but yeah, I have a good relationship with Judge Jenkins in Texas. Very good relationship with him and Judge Andy Brown here in Travis, all the large counties, you know, El Paso, San Antonio, we're all buddies. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I just have to say, we're almost running out of time here, so we have time for one more question. But I do want to say, I have never seen such a supportive chat featured. So many comments saying that they support you, and there's this. I'm going to read out loud just verbatim this really lovely comment. I work in the counseling center at University of Houston, and really want to express my gratitude for the courage you showed in helping to destigmatize depression. Depression and anxiety are the top concerns presented by our students in the counseling center, and it really helps to have a public figure talk so openly and advocate so strongly for the needs of those struggling with these issues every day. Thank you. And that was just such a lovely note. I just had to read that out loud. So one last question, just to end on a bit of a more lighthearted note, not to get personal, but what do you do for fun? You're doing a great job and appreciate how you stand up to public criticism.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for that comment and for the work you do at the counseling center. There is such a thing as vicarious trauma, as the person probably knows. Well, these days I'm wedding planning, and I'm like buying one too many dresses for the wedding. I'm like, well, I need one for the after party and I need one for the honeymoon. And so anyway, that's bad. And then I have a group of friends and we just like to do random things. Like we've gone to watch my boxing coach, who's an Olympian. She's like super awesome, actually has been public about her OCD and seeking treatment in patients. So that also helped me. And so just watching her fight, I like to do boxing. I'm learning, like by no means, you know, particularly good at it. I like to read. I like to watch TV. And
Any good shows lately?
well, so Chloe Dow is making my wedding dress, and so I
Oh,
had to watch her season of
absolutely. Yeah,
How to
classic.
Summarize. But then like I also had to watch Christian Siriano's season because he's like a big deal. So oh, and I had to watch like Alan, you know, from Alan Tude. He moved to New York now, which makes me sad, but he's a dreamer who's also a designer from our community. So yeah, so I'm I'm on that train right now. But yeah, I mean, I guess normal stuff. I like to play with my cat. Oh, I'm trying to like some of my homework from Lindner is like do like more creative things. And also like, yeah, things when you're not in charge. Like I've been having my friends take me to like cultural activities, and then I've also been painting and singing. So you know, my fiance says I'm good, but I don't think I believe him. Yeah.
He's a good fiance for saying that.
Yeah.
All right, that's fantastic. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Judge Hidalgo, for joining us today. Thank you to our readers and subscribers for your support. We'll again have a recording of this up on our YouTube page tomorrow. And thanks so much. Thanks, Jen Rice, too, for moderating. Have a great day.
Thank you guys. Bye.